Hey, welcome back to the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast with your co-host Chris Harris of Safety Dawg and myself, John Farquhar of Summit Risk Solutions. We got a great session going on today. We've got Manan Gupta from Road Today magazine, and he's got some great information he's going to share with us, some updates on some immigration opportunities with truck drivers, and he's going to give us an update on some supply chain task force recommendations that recently come down the pipeline. So let's get into it with our special guest, Manan Gupta, today.
Well, hello, Manan. Hello, Chris. Glad to see you guys could join us. How's life going?
Thank you very much, John, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you and Chris.
Manan, you're looking fantastic today. For those of you who are joining in audio, it looks like Manan's got a suit on. He must be going to the government or something much more important than
I was going to appear with both of you gentlemen, so I thought I better spend some extra time.
Well, I'm glad to see we got a top dresser on the show here, so thank you, Manan, for that. Appreciate it.
I feel so underdressed. I don't want to stand up. I'm still in my pajama pants.
Underdressed is better than undressed.
Yes, true. That's true. No doubt.
Hey, Manan, the last time I saw you, I think it was at the Atlantic Provinces Truck Show.
Yes, yes.
Which was awesome.
Yeah, it was in Moncton, yeah.
Many things changing. And I know one of the things, Manan, that I hadn't heard of before is express entry for truck drivers. Can you explain what that is?
Correct. And that's a very recent, big announcement being made by the Federal Immigration Minister, Honorable Sean Fraser. We all know, that there is an acute shortage of professional workforce within so many different sectors. Trucking is one of them. So on November 16th, the Honorable Immigration Minister added transport truck drivers in one of those occupations, one of those professions, which are eligible for express entry. Express entry is a unique pathway wherein people can apply for Canadian immigration to become permanent residents if they meet certain criteria. So prior to that, transport truck driver was not included in that profession list. So 16 new professions have been added. And I'm pleased to mention here that transport truck driver is one of them. So it will open the pathway to become permanent residents. It will open the way to fill in the vacancies in trucking and transportation industry, because if there is an acute shortage of 28 to 30,000 professional truck drivers, it does impact our supply chain and the flow of goods and movement. Yeah.
Right. Well, So with this express entry, obviously you have to have previous experience as a commercial motor vehicle in your country where you come from and whatnot. Does this mean that these drivers would still be required to go through the licensing process here in Canada through the provincial jurisdiction that they land in?
Yeah, absolutely. The MELT program will always be on the top of things. Now, this express entry program, John and Chris, this is going to basically help people, those who are already in Canada, those who are the temporary foreign workers, those who have been driving trucks here, those who have gone through the MELT program. So it will give them an easy pathway to apply to become permanent residents now. So their experience, their training, their education, their responsibilities will now be counted formally, officially towards express entry requirement.
Cool.
So that should help us get some more truck drivers, because I got to believe, as an immigrant, if I was selecting a country to move to, not being able to apply for permanent residency after being here for a couple of years, that's a downer, I would think.
Exactly. And it doesn't help in the long term, because we want those people, those who come to Canada as a transport truck driver, to stay within this sector, contribute themselves and, serve the industry for a longer term, because if they don't stay in the industry, then this, driver shortage problem is not going to go away.
Will there be a requirement for them to stay in the industry for a certain period in order to maintain their residency status, or not necessarily?
No, not necessarily. There are no restrictions once you become a permanent resident. People can move, to different provinces. People can change their professions, occupation, and people do that all the time. It's not necessarily transport truck drivers. A lawyer can become, move on to a different section, a different profession, and so it's for transport truck driver. And also the fact, John, that within trucking industry, there are a lot of non-driving jobs available. Say, for example, the transport truck driver wants to go into safety and compliance, or become something to, serve a white collar job. Why not?
Yep, exactly. Well, and that's what we need, is because it's not just truck drivers we need, it's people in the trucking industry, so it's an excellent way. So yeah, so for those that are looking to immigrate to Canada, if you've got previous trucking experience, that just makes it an easier move into this area. Get your license upgraded, get into the role of truck driving, and you've got a guaranteed job. There's no doubt about that. And then the opportunity of a fast tracking of your permanent residency.
Correct.
Now,
Cool.
This may be an unfair question. So I'll start with that first. But what additional responsibilities would a trucking company have, or hurdles might be the other way to say it, that would a trucking company have when they wanted to hire somebody in this program?
Well, these the programs, the temporary foreign workers, the foreign driver program is regulated through the ESDC department, Employment and Social Development Canada. So it's a very cumbersome process. It's not an easy process to get the permission to hire foreign workers under transport truck driver occupation. You have to have, met certain criteria, the employment standards, and your basic, what kind of business volume you do. But having said that, the process is called LMIA, Labor Market Impact Assessment. So if there is really a need and you can't get your vacancies fulfilled from local residents, local people, those who are already in Canada, whether they are permanent residents or citizens, then the ESDC issues you a positive LMIA. So I'm hearing out from some, internal stakeholders that the federal government is trying to ensure that only those trucking fleets get benefit of this LMIA process or temporary foreign worker process. Those who are legitimate carriers, those who are not misusing some of the, misclassification business schemes out there. So, and they're also trying to make sure that only those fleets can take advantage of this program. Those safety record is exemplary high.
This is good to hear.
Yeah. And sorry, I'm smiling now because you brought up one of John and I have a favorite topic at the moment.
I got myself trapped already, right? So,
well, no, it's actually one of the things that you said you would address. Okay. And so what I heard you say, and correct me if I didn't understand it correctly, carriers that are using the Driver Inc. model would not be able to use the foreign worker program.
Well, it's not certainly like a yes and no answer, like a shut and open case. But I think the thing is, the federal government is trying to create as much awareness possible, as much enforcement, like a carrot and stick policy that, they're trying to pre-warn those fleets that if you are using a Driver Inc. model, if you are already not fulfilling your tax obligations, if you are misclassifying your employees as independent contractors, then those doors of opportunities might be shut for you, or there might be more questioning involved in opening those doors for you. So that is what I think the pathway is, but having said that, sometimes the federal government take years and ages to come up with a decision. Like we just recently saw the announcement of 250,000 penalty to employer those who are using Driver Inc. It was 5 years in the making. The Canadian Trucking Alliance and so many other stakeholders, they have been really advocating for tough enforcement. So finally, the announcement was made by Honorable Labor Minister Thomas O'Regan Jr. Earlier this month.
Well, and one of the things is people in the industry needs to understand, we have this foreign worker program. We have the ability, we're going to start working with this express entry program. The whole idea is to bring immigrants into this country to help our workforce and also build our tax base. Not for you as a company to take advantage of the labor of this individual to help you profit. It is to help the whole country be better. And that's where part of the tax base goes, is to help your municipality, your province, the Canada as a whole, to be a better country. And when we classify drivers, we take advantage of that. And you're taking advantage of that individual that wanted to come to Canada for a better life.
Yeah, and you have very rightly said, John, that those people, those who want to come to Canada for a better life, sometimes they are duped into unhealthy
Yes.
work conditions. They are not paid as per the norms. They are not even paid their vacation pay, overtime,
Yep.
hazards pay. And very soon there will be there is a provision for the federally regulated carriers to offer 10 days of sick leave.
Yes.
Even they will be missing out on those opportunities if they have to. God forbid if
Yeah.
they fell sick. So definitely, I think the need of the hour is for the federal government to ensure that the labor code, Canadian labor code, is fully enforced, and there are fair practices out there for everybody. Because if we are not contributing to the tax base, we cannot expect our government of any political party to deliver on their promises, because ultimately the money is coming in and out through that tax-based system.
Exactly.
The Driver Inc. model has to be quashed one of these days.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it's going to happen in 2023 yet. But the first step has been taken. Thank goodness.
Yeah, and I think just on that note, Chris, the federal budget coming up in 2023 will have more announcements related to Driver Inc. because we just saw the fall economic statement. It had a mention of around $26 million allocated for the next 5 years to create more awareness, more education. But the very fact that Driver Inc. was being able to be included in the fall economic statement, it itself shows that the federal government has finally waken up to the advocacy needs put in together by trucking industry.
Yep. So,
boy, as you say, it's been a long time. You said about 5 years?
Yeah. At least since I've been hearing about Driver Inc. since 2017, end of 2016, the CTAs of the world, they have been advocating, lobbying hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's been around a lot longer than that. Maybe not as the Driver Inc. model, but certainly 30 years ago, I know owner-operators were using sole proprietors. They were paying cash basically to sole proprietors. It's something that's been in this industry for a very, very long time, and it should be eradicated.
Well, if there is something like people are using loopholes, if they are abusing the tax code, or if they're abusing the system due to lack of enforcement, you cannot blame them. The enforcement has to be on the top of things. If you are driving without a license on a highway, nobody stops you. Without insurance, you will keep on driving unless you are caught. So
exactly,
it boils down to enforcement, and enforcement has to be foolproof. It has to be all across. It cannot be selective in one province and you forget other provinces, because then those bad apples, they travel to other provinces and start, building up their empires there.
I'll give you a really good example of that, Manan. So here in my household, we like to make our cookies. We don't buy them. So chocolate chip cookies are my favorite. And we have a jar of them in the cup. Yeah.
So I need to send my address.
Yeah, okay, cool. I can do that. So we have a jar of them in the pantry closet. And I'll tell you what, if that jar's not being guarded, I'm the first guy raiding that cookie jar. But then when I get caught, right, and my wife has a tendency to show up and catch me with my hand in the cookie jar, that's called enforcement. And I'll tell you what, that cookie jar has a tendency to disappear after that. So, so you have to be really good. So if there's no enforcement, people are just going to get away with putting their hand in the cookie jar.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, Manan, about the 10 sick days, right? That happens when? January the 1st of 23?
I believe it starts on December the 1st, actually.
Yeah, December 1st. Yeah.
That's like, okay, we're recording this late November. That's like in 2 days.
Yeah. It's coming up very soon. And
Well, do you remember offhand the other benefits that are being employees? Just for our viewers, if you are federally regulated employee, it doesn't necessarily apply just to trucking, but if you're a federally regulated employee, you are now entitled to 10 sick days a year that don't accumulate. If I'm saying that correctly, Manan, correct me if I misspoke there, but that's one of the benefits that are being enacted very soon.
Yeah, that is true. And definitely, I would request any viewer who wants more clarity to speak to your HR department so that, they would have more clarity on that. But this is what we are hearing, that starting December 1st, every federally regulated a company organization has to offer 10 days of sick days, to their employees. Yeah.
Yeah. And the optimum word there is employee, not driver. The Driver Inc. model, well, would be exempt from that because they're not an employee.
Yeah.
And this is why a driver should not be a Driver Inc. driver. He should not be working under subcontract. You are missing out on many of these perks that are allowed to you. Man, and you touched on it, overtime pay, your sick days, there's vacation time and all this stuff that drivers, I think, are being duped in the fact that they don't thoroughly understand the protections that are there as an employee and the benefits in pay packages and compensation of being an employee. And until that education comes around, that's going to be a big help to the drivers to stop going, well, I don't want to be Driver Inc. No, I want to be on payroll so that I can get the access to these perks that I deserve.
Yeah. I think awareness is key, and awareness at the right time when you are hiring or when you are getting into the trucking industry. And that is where even I think the truck training providers, they need to step up and start creating awareness, because they are the first piece of interaction between a newcomer when they get their license.
Right.
Well, that and man, I don't know if you've heard of these horror stories of the abuse of some Driver Inc. drivers. I know of several companies that, for example, a Driver Inc. driver has a crash. Well, they're charged a $5,000 deductible for that crash, or they're charged other expenses.
And then at the same time, I hear a number of them are terminated without cause, right? Yeah. So, which is illegal under the federal regulations with Canada Labor Code. So there's no severance pay. There's nothing like this. And then their paychecks are being duped, like you say, Chris.
Yeah, no, certainly there's a lot of abuse happening out there, and people don't read the fine print, in the contract. They never get their contracts, verified or, have a second thought by any lawyer. So there are a lot of shortcomings in the system.
Yeah.
So and that kind of brings us back to the immigration process and why the government might be or should be looking at the company's structure on how they are going to use these new immigrants and welcome them to Canada. They need to be employees, so they can't be abused, and they get all the protections that the government has deemed, I guess, necessary.
Well, they deserve.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is going to enhance not only the professionalism in trucking industry, but it's also going to open up Canada's image as a country with with good legal practices and good labor code.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I'd love to hear some of the discussions in other countries on how they see Canada.
Yeah, no doubt.
We need immigrants in Canada.
Yeah.
I think we are on the whole, a welcoming country. I'm not sure the transportation industry itself is as welcoming as it could be.
Well, Canada is opening its doors to immigration. The immigration numbers are going to be 500,000 in 2025 as per the latest structure announced by the federal government. So, Canada is an immigrant-friendly nation. We just need to ensure that those who get into different professions, especially in the trucking and transportation industry, they are aware of their rights. They are aware of, what is good for them, and they make a well-informed decision. So there has to be some way where, that information is passed on to them at the right time for a better decision.
Sure. Any idea what those numbers are currently for immigration coming into Canada, Manan, by chance? Like, do we know what those current numbers are?
Well, the numbers right now there are about 400,000 per year in different categories. This is not just permanent residents or, students, or this is all inclusive. So that number is going to go in stages to up to 500,000 in 2025.
Okay. So it's like a 25% increase then?
Yeah. And the reason is, John, that the government of the day is realizing the fact that it is the immigrants, those who are filling in the labor shortage gap.
Yes.
They are the ones who are making sure that things get manufactured, shipped. And, they are also, immigrants are the, most consumers, so because they're adding to that middle class and the new, buying class. Yeah.
Well, And this was no different, really. Might be a little larger scale, but it's no different than if we go back, oh my God, 100 years.
Absolutely.
The immigrants that came into North America, and I'll say North America because there was a lot in the U.S., to help build this region, Canada and the U.S. So it was needed. The Irish were coming into town. The Italians were coming into town. And, a lot of them were all fighting and carrying on and hated each other. I think every generation hates immigrants no matter what, but we need immigration. We need to grow the country. It's booming and whatnot. So, nobody's having enough babies to make this happen.
Yeah, the fertility rate is very low of traditional Canadians. So definitely the immigrants are going to fill in the gap over there. And they're also contributing to the tax base. They are making sure that our economy is thriving, whatever is the percentage, but still they are contributing a lot.
Well, and Canada's been known as a very large country with a very low population for the size of the landmass,
Certainly.
Yeah. I'd help out bring more babies in, but unfortunately I've been cut off. Wife says no more. Yeah.
Hey, Manan, just for John, I should say, I somewhat disagree with your comment when you said we all hate immigration. And I know I've changed my attitude because when I was in my 20s, I didn't understand how important immigration was.
Agreed.
Now that I'm an old fart, I think I've changed my attitude to immigration. And I wonder if that's not this experience speaking. Man,
perhaps it could also be due to the reason, just a segue from what you just said, Chris, is due to the fact that now you have been dealing with a lot of immigrants in your profession. You know the nuances, the insight, and how hardworking they are. How abused sometimes they get into situations of no fault of theirs. So that is where the appreciation for immigrants, do come up.
Yeah, no, the abuse of immigrants is
I think you're right, Chris. It's education. Yeah. It's education. There's no doubt about it. We need better education on that because I agree with you. When I was younger, it was like, immigrants. What do we need immigrants for? Well, for crying out loud, I'm only a third generation Canadian. My great grandparents were immigrants that came to this country from Scotland, so we need these people. It's the only way you're going to grow this country.
Oh, damn, John. Now you and I got to fight. You're Scottish. I'm Irish. That's not a good mix.
Do you want me to do the moderating? Yeah. I should go away.
Yeah. You know what? I think we're just going to sit here and drink.
Oh, man.
We'll fight over the bottle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we could do that. Man, and we're coming up onto a 30-minute thing here. What other topics would you like to address?
Well, there's so much things happening in the trucking, transportation, and supply chain industry. The supply chain task force has just given its 21 recommendations, and I do hope that those recommendations are strictly adhered to and some action happens there, because if we really want to unclog our supply chain with delays at the ports, at the borders, we really need to have a collaborative approach. Federal government has to work with the provincial governments, and so is with other stakeholders. The delays at the borders are unacceptable. We need to open up our fast enrollment centers. We need to make sure that training incentives are offered for newcomers to embrace trucking and transportation. So there are a lot of things which our policymakers, our decision makers, they need to push forward in a timely manner.
Well, we got a few more minutes. Give us an example of the one of the 21 recommendations.
Well, like I mentioned, the enrollment centers, like the free and secure trade fast card, which is a very important tool available for truck drivers. But the fast enrollment centers have been shut down since COVID. We are not having the nexus interviews being held. The delays, the congestion at the ports, at the borders is impacting the quality of life. When there is no service center, where there is lack of parking, when there is no incentive available for people to embrace trucking, because training costs are becoming exorbitantly high. With the MELT program, a truck driver who used to get trained in a $1,500, $2,000 cost, now it has gone up to $8,000 to $10,000, and that is also not enough. So the government really needs to help those people, those who want to join trucking, by offering some tax incentives, by offering them, funding, so that we can attract women, we can attract people of color, we can attract our native communities and everybody to come and be part of a solution.
Yeah, no, well said, man. Because
Agreed.
I love trucking, and I think this is the best industry in Canada to be employed in. And sometimes we make mistakes as an industry.
Of course, mistakes do happen, but if there is a will to move on, learn from our mistakes, and get ourselves loaded with knowledge, the thing which you both have been providing through your podcast, through your blog, definitely kudos to your effort, because it takes a lot of time and attention to put this together, and the whole goal is to create awareness. So that is where, we at Woocom Media, we also, try to make sure that our readership across the country, coast to coast to coast, they get the best information from our editors, from our trained staff, those who are committed to deliver with quality journalism.
Perfect.
Oh, man, thank you so much. Your contact info is in the show notes down below. I would encourage our listeners and viewers to leave you a comment on the platform or to reach out to you directly and give you the feedback that maybe they have a different opinion than some of the things that you've mentioned.
Absolutely. Diversity of opinions is, a great asset in our democracy.
Yes.
And why not? We should have a diversity of thoughts, and your comments are equally welcome. And critical commentary is always, need of the hour. And that is what we are all here for, different color, but inside the bodies, we have the same red blood flowing,
Yep.
We all
Exactly.
believe the
Exactly.
same.
Yep. So true.
Manan Gupta of Road Today magazine, thank you so much for coming on to the Trucking Risk and Insurance podcast. It was great stuff.
It was a pleasure to be in front of both of you, learned professionals, the stalwarts of the industry. Thank you very much, John and Chris, for stepping up and for inviting me to today's podcast.
Well, thanks for coming on, Manan. We appreciate that. And this has been some great information. I think we need to maybe reach out to Manan in the near future and do some more updates and maybe get you back on here and talk about what's coming down the pipe, because you've obviously got a direct avenue to that pipeline that's coming out of the wall.
Well, we just keep our eyes and ears open. But thank you once again for the kind words, and looking forward to coming back.